The morning rush had already taken hold of the city cafe by the time I clocked in. The smell of freshly ground coffee beans mingled with the faint scent of cinnamon from the morning pastries, creating a familiar comfort amidst the chaos. I moved from station to station, steaming milk, pulling shots, and calling out orders in a rhythm that felt like second nature. The cafe was a small refuge, a place where the world slowed down just enough for me to breathe. That's when I noticed her. A woman with sharp features and an impeccable suit hurriedly gathering her things at the counter. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her bag, and she kept glancing at the clock on the wall like she was racing against time. In the flurry of her exit, she left behind a small leather purse, almost blending in with the clutter on the counter. I spotted it just as the door swung shut behind her, the bell chiming a final hurried farewell. Instinctively, I picked up the purse, feeling the smoothness of the leather beneath my fingers. It was a small thing, but it seemed important, not just from its quality, but from the way the woman had clearly forgotten it in her rush. I tucked it under my arm and scanned the cafe, hoping she might still be nearby. No sign of her. The steady hum of conversation and clinking cups filled the air, but none of it felt important anymore. This purse was my responsibility now. I moved behind the counter to a quieter corner, away from the steady stream of customers, and gently opened the clasp. Inside, the purse was neat and organized. A few credit cards, some cash, and then something unexpected caught my eye. A folded photograph tucked carefully between the bills. I hesitated, then unfolded it slowly. The image was of a man. He had dark hair, a strong jawline, and eyes that seemed too familiar. For a moment I thought it was a stranger, but the shock hit me all at once. This man was my brother. I hadn't seen him in years. Since he disappeared, there had been nothing but silence and unanswered questions. The years had passed like a blur, filled with a mixture of hope and despair that never quite dissipated. And here, in a stranger's purse, was his face staring back at me. My hands trembled slightly as I refolded the photograph and replaced it carefully. I needed to think, to breathe, but the cafe's noise pressed in around me, making it hard to focus. People came and went, oblivious to the storm swirling inside me. Who was this woman? How did she have a picture of my brother? And more importantly, why? Memories flooded back. The last time I saw him, the way he had looked over his shoulder before disappearing into the night, the phone calls that never came, the silent void he left behind. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. I glanced around the cafe again, hoping the businesswoman might return, but there was no sign of her. The day blurred as I wrestled with 1,000 questions. Every instinct told me to find her, to ask about the picture, to uncover the truth behind the mystery that had haunted me for so long. But how? I was just a barista, an ordinary person tangled in an extraordinary moment. The thought of confronting a stranger with such a secret felt daunting, but the pull of the unknown was too strong to ignore. As the morning gave way to afternoon, I kept the purse safe behind the counter, telling myself I would return it soon. Yet the photograph stayed with me, a silent reminder of a past I thought I'd left behind and a future suddenly uncertain. For the first time in years I felt a flicker of hope and fear, intertwining in a way I couldn't shake. The cafe buzzed around me, but my mind was elsewhere, tangled in memories and questions that refused to settle. I kept glancing at the purse nestled safely behind the counter like it was a fragile secret I wasn't sure I was ready to share. The photograph of my brother haunted me, his face a ghost from the past that refused to fade. I remembered the last time I saw him, standing at the edge of the old neighborhood park, his eyes distant as if he was already slipping away into a world I couldn't reach. It had been years since then, years of silence and unanswered calls. His disappearance had left a hole in my life that nothing seemed to fill. Now the sight of his face tucked inside a stranger's purse felt like a cruel twist of fate, or maybe a lifeline. I debated what to do next. Should I confront the woman directly? Ask her about the picture and risk everything? Or should I try to dig quietly, to understand what kind of connection she had to my brother without alarming her? The thought of approaching a stranger with such a personal question was terrifying, but the hope of answers was pulling me forward. The door chimed and my heart skipped a beat. A woman stepped inside, her heels clicking against the tile floor. She was the same one who had left the purse behind, sharp, composed, and clearly someone used to being in control. She scanned the room briefly, then walked to the counter, her eyes locking with mine for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. "Excuse me," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "You left this." I held out the purse, watching her expression flicker from surprise to relief. "Thank you," she said, her tone polite but guarded as she took it from me. Her fingers brushed mine briefly, an unspoken tension hanging in the air. I hesitated, then found myself blurting out. "There was a picture inside. A man. He looks familiar to me. Do you know him?" Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment she seemed to weigh her options. "Why do you ask?" she said carefully. I think he's my brother," I admitted, feeling the words tumble out faster than I planned. "He disappeared years ago. I haven't heard from him since." Her gaze softened, but the guarded look didn't completely disappear. "That's a complicated story," she said finally. "I can't just explain it here." I nodded, sensing that pushing her wouldn't help. "I understand. But if you know anything, I'd like to hear it. I've been waiting for answers for so long." She glanced around the cafe, lowering her voice. "This isn't just about your brother. It's bigger than you realize. There are things at stake you don't know about." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. What kind of danger was my brother involved in? Why had he disappeared? The woman's tone was serious, almost urgent, but it was clear she wasn't ready to share everything yet. We stood there in a fragile silence before she spoke again. "I manage his business affairs now. It's not safe for him to be out in the open. That's why he had to disappear." My mind reeled at the revelation. Business affairs? Disappearing for safety? It was like stepping into a story I hadn't been prepared for. My brother, the missing figure from my life, was now part of something shadowy and complex. Why didn't he contact me? Why keep me in the dark? I asked, voice tight with a mix of hurt and confusion. "Protection," she said simply. "Sometimes keeping people away is the only way to keep them safe." I wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to the hope that my brother was alive and looked after. But the weight of years lost in secrets kept pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. She looked at me again, softer this time. "I'm sorry you've been left out. But now you know part of the truth. And if you want, there's a way to be involved. It won't be easy. It won't be safe. But you're not alone." Her words felt like a door opening. A chance to step back into the world my brother had left behind. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I nodded slowly, determination settling in. I didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face it. To uncover the secrets, confront the dangers, and maybe, just maybe, find my brother again. The cafe had quieted down by the time the woman, her name was Elena as she finally revealed, leaned in closer and lowered her voice to a near whisper. The shift in her demeanor was palpable. The polished, controlled exterior faltered for a moment, revealing the weight she carried beneath. "You want to know the truth about your brother," she began, eyes flickering with something like regret. "He's not just missing. He's involved in something much larger than either of us imagined." I swallowed hard, the air thick with tension. "What do you mean? What kind of something?" Elena hesitated, then took a breath. "He was forced to disappear because his life was in danger. Not from random chance. From powerful enemies who want to destroy everything he's built." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My brother, the person I'd been searching for, worrying about every day, was caught in a web of danger I'd never suspected. The quiet man I remembered, the one who'd vanished without a trace, was now part of a high-stakes game with shadowy rivals and hidden agendas. She continued, her voice steady despite the gravity. "He built a business empire from nothing, but with that came enemies. People who would see him fall at any cost. He had no choice but to vanish, to protect himself and those he cares about." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. The brother I missed was alive. Yes, but living a life I couldn't touch, one filled with threats and secrets. It was as if he had become a ghost in a world that didn't want him. But why keep me out of it? I asked, frustration and hurt bleeding through my words. Why not tell me? I'm his sister. Elena's eyes softened, but the sadness in them was unmistakable. Because it wasn't safe. Not just for him but for anyone connected to him. You were kept away because the people after him don't just threaten him. They threaten everyone he loves. Her explanation was both a comfort and a torment. It made sense, but it also meant years of silence, years lost to fear and protection. I clenched my fists, the ache of separation intensifying. "Do you even know where he is?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. She nodded slowly. "I do. And I manage everything on his behalf now. It's a delicate balance, keeping his legacy alive while keeping him hidden." The idea that my brother's life was being managed like a fragile project, orchestrated behind closed doors, was surreal. I pictured him somewhere unknown, trapped in a life of shadows, while I remained on the outside, powerless. I swallowed the lump in my throat and gathered my courage. I want to help. I want to be part of this, whatever it takes. Elena regarded me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. "It won't be easy. This world isn't kind to outsiders. But if you're willing, there's a place for you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small card, sliding it across the counter. "Call this number when you're ready. We'll talk more. But be careful. Not everyone is who they seem." The weight of the moment settled heavily on me. I took the card, feeling the smooth paper between my fingers, a tangible link to a world I'd only glimpsed in fragments. I looked up at Elena, searching for reassurance. She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You're stronger than you think. Your brother would be proud." The words struck a chord deep inside me. For so long I'd felt powerless and lost, but now for the first time there was a path forward. Fraught with danger, yes, but filled with hope. As Elena turned to leave, the cafe seemed suddenly too small, too ordinary for the storm swirling inside me. I folded the card carefully and slipped it into my pocket, my mind racing with questions and possibilities. The photograph of my brother still sat in my purse at home, a reminder of the past and a beacon for what might come next. The man I thought I knew was part of a world I barely understood, but now I was determined to step into it. The day faded into evening, the city lights flickering on as I closed the cafe for the night. Alone in the quiet, I found myself staring at the photograph again, tracing the lines of his face with a finger trembling with both fear and resolve. Who was he now? What had he become? And could I find him amidst the shadows that had swallowed so much of our past? The questions lingered, unanswered but urgent. And for the first time in years I felt ready to seek the truth, no matter the cost. The following days passed in a blur of restless thoughts and cautious steps. Elena's card sat heavy in my pocket like a secret promise, a fragile thread connecting me to the brother I'd longed to find. I knew I had a choice. Retreat back into the safety of my ordinary life or step forward into the unknown world she had hinted at. A world filled with shadows, secrets, and risks I could barely imagine. After hours of pacing my small apartment and wrestling with the doubts and fears that threatened to paralyze me, I finally made the call. My voice was tentative when I dialed the number, but Elena answered swiftly, her tone steady and reassuring. "Good," she said simply. "Meet me tomorrow. There's a lot to explain, and we need to start carefully." The next day, I found myself in a sleek office building far from the familiar streets of my neighborhood. Elena was waiting in a quiet conference room, her posture professional but softer than before. As she began to speak, the scale of what I was stepping into became clearer. "The business your brother built isn't just a company," she explained. "It's an empire, with interests that stretch far beyond what most people see. With that comes power, and enemies who want to take it all away." Her words unfolded like a story I had only glimpsed in movies or books. Corporate battles, hostile takeovers, and threats not just to assets but to lives. I listened, absorbing the complexity and danger that had shaped the man I thought I knew. "He had to disappear to protect everything," Elena continued. "But he never wanted to cut you out. It was the only way to keep you safe." I nodded, the mix of anger and understanding swirling inside me. "So what happens now? How do I fit into this?" Elena paused, studying me carefully. "You have a unique perspective. You're not just family. You're someone who understands the world outside the boardrooms and backdoors. That can be an asset." She outlined a plan for me to gradually become involved, starting with learning the basics of the business and the people who ran it, moving carefully to avoid drawing unwanted attention. It was a delicate dance between trust and caution. As we spoke, I realized how much I had underestimated the complexity of my brother's life. The secrecy, the protection, and the weight of responsibility he carried had shaped every decision. But Elena's offer was more than just a chance to reconnect. It was an invitation to become part of a legacy I never knew existed. Over the next few weeks, I attended meetings, studied reports, and met key players behind the scenes. The business world was a far cry from the cozy cafe where I worked, filled with sharp suits and sharper minds. Yet I found myself surprisingly engaged, my own insights and experiences offering fresh perspectives that Elena seemed to value. The alliance between us was tentative, built on mutual need and cautious trust. She shared the challenges she faced managing the empire, the constant vigilance required to fend off rivals, and the loneliness that came with the role. In turn, I brought a sense of groundedness and empathy that balanced the cold calculations of corporate strategy. Through it all, the question of my brother's whereabouts and well-being remained a constant undercurrent. Elena was careful not to reveal too much, but I sensed her own hope that this new chapter might somehow lead to his return. One evening after a long day of meetings, Elena and I sat in her office, the city lights twinkling beyond the window. The conversation drifted from business to personal reflections. "You've come a long way," she said quietly. "Most people wouldn't have the courage to step into this world." I smiled softly, a mix of pride and vulnerability. "It's not just about courage. It's about family. About hope." She nodded. "Your brother would be proud of you. And maybe with you involved things can change." The weight of those words settled between us, a silent acknowledgement of the journey ahead. I felt the fragile threads of connection weaving into something stronger, something that might bridge the distance time and danger had created. As I left that night walking through the quiet streets, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path was uncertain, fraught with risks and shadows, but it was mine to walk. With Elena's guidance and the memory of my brother close, I was ready to face whatever came next. The photograph of my brother still rested on my desk at home, a constant reminder of the past and the future intertwined. I looked at it often, imagining the moment we might finally be reunited. And in the stillness of those nights, I held on to the hope that family ties, no matter how tangled or strained, could endure, and that through this new alliance, I might find not only answers but a way to bring him back into my life once more. Days later, I found myself alone in my apartment, the soft glow of the desk lamp illuminating the photograph of my brother. His eyes, once distant and yet familiar, seemed to hold a new kind of promise, a promise I was determined to honor. In my hand, the business card Elena had given me felt like a talisman, a link to a world I'd barely begun to understand but was ready to embrace. I had agreed to work alongside Elena, stepping into the intricate web of the empire my brother had built. The decision wasn't easy. It meant leaving behind the comfort of my previous life, diving headfirst into uncertainty and danger. But the pull of family, the hope of reunion, outweighed every hesitation. My first days in this new role were a whirlwind. I attended meetings where names and figures flew over my head, requiring focus and quick adaptation. Yet, with each passing hour, I found myself growing more confident, my perspective as an outsider bringing fresh ideas to the table. Elena proved to be an invaluable mentor, part stern strategist, part compassionate guide, helping me navigate the labyrinthine world of power plays and guarded alliances. One afternoon, Elena called me into a private conference room. She handed me a folder thick with reports and dossiers, her expression serious yet encouraging. "You're ready for this," she said. "We need your insight. Things are shifting, and your perspective could make all the difference." Opening the folder, I saw details about projects, partnerships, and risks that stretched across the city and beyond. It was daunting, but I felt a surge of purpose. I was no longer just the sister waiting in the dark. I was part of the story shaping its course. As days turned into weeks, I immersed myself deeper, learning not only about the business but about the people who inhabited it. Elena introduced me to trusted allies and warned me about those whose smiles masked ulterior motives. The fragile balance of trust and caution became a daily exercise. Throughout it all, the photograph of my brother remained my anchor. I kept it close, sometimes tracing the lines of his face when doubt crept in. I imagined him somewhere out there, hidden but alive, carrying burdens I was only beginning to understand. One evening, after a long day filled with strategy sessions and negotiations, Elena and I shared a quiet moment in her office. The city stretched out beneath us, a tapestry of lights that seemed endless. "You've changed everything," she said softly. "Your involvement has brought new hope to this place." I smiled, though the ache of separation lingered. "It's more than hope. It's about family, about reclaiming what was lost." She nodded, her eyes reflecting a rare vulnerability. "Your brother would be proud. And maybe soon things will change for all of you." Her words settled in my heart, a silent vow that the journey was far from over, but that the path ahead was illuminated by something stronger than fear. Later that night I sat by my window, the cool breeze brushing against my skin. The city's pulse was steady, a reminder that life moved forward even in the face of uncertainty. I held the photograph again, feeling a quiet resolve. This was no longer just a story of loss and mystery. It was a story of resilience, courage, and the enduring bonds that tie us together regardless of time or distance. And as the night deepened, I whispered a promise to the man in the photograph, that I would find him, stand beside him, and face whatever challenges came next, because family was worth every risk, every sacrifice. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I believed it held possibility. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.